But what you can do in that facilitative space, where we're going from a space where we get everyone on the same place before we diverge, as Dave Gray would say, that gamification space, where true authenticity is key before we converge. What you can do is create a place of safety. Visual thinking is not about drawing pretty pictures, but it's about the stuff that matters in product and in business, which is generating ideas, solving problems, and finding alignment and building on those human connections.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Dhanda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Thank you, folks, for joining me on another episode of the Superpower School podcast. I'm your host, Paddy Dhanda, and today I have a guest who, in many ways, reminds me very much of myself. He doesn't have a beard like me, but he has skills that I am very passionate about, and that includes everything from visual thinking through to product thinking, product facilitation, product training, Agile, all of those amazing human skills. And I'm in awe of the great work that this man does. So Stuart Young, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you. So we're very similar. We even have similar glasses.
Oh yeah, I didn't really look at that. Yeah.
It's
black frames.
It's uncanny. I can't grow a beard, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're welcome, Stuart. And which superpower would you like to bring to this particular episode?
Oh, you mentioned so many things that we share. I'm going to say authenticity. That threw me as much as you. We'll work with that.
Nice. So being your true self.
Yes. So I think, as you just did that very kind intro, and you're absolutely right, and ditto to you on all the things you've mentioned. I'm a trainer, I'm a coach, facilitator. And as much as we talk about your stances when you're in a room with people and how you can bring out the best and the most in that learning and supporting people, I think you as a trainer, as a coach, as a facilitator, you need to be your authentic self. And being authentic enables you to build better connections. So that's my superpower of the day.
Well, hey, and I love that because for many years when I was starting off on my corporate journey, I was working with these big corporates, and every time I'd be thinking in my head, I need to fit in. I need to be like everyone else. And it's only years later when I look back, I think, actually, no one remembers you when you're just the same as everybody else. So actually, why don't you embrace those differences and those quirky sort of personality traits and actually just be yourself? So I'd love to hear your angle on this. Like, why is it so important to be authentic at work?
So everything you've just said about those quirks, about being you, much like yourself as a sort of a professional trainer, we talk about those stances and we talk about those modes and the ways in which you can connect with people. And of course, there are things that you can do to improve the learning experience and the collaboration, both in a room or virtually. And you can sort of change and sort of mold and craft into the needs of a group. But being your authentic self comes from a place of, I think, sadness and joy. We've all got a background. We're all life experts of our own experience, and the things that we've learned, we've had to face adversity, we've had to face problems, we've faced excitement, and all of those things have grounded us and molded us into who we are. And that authenticity enables us to be more impactful and to tell those really good stories. For example, we've all been there. You've seen someone tell an amazing joke. You go in for it and it just doesn't land. You have to be you. And I think that's key. That's key to making strong connections, which is then focusing on helping with communication and collaboration.
And when it comes to facilitation, because I'm going to focus on facilitation for a moment, and I know this is something you're a master of. So when you're with a group of people, how do you ensure that you enable them to be their authentic selves? Are there things that facilitators can do to help bring that into the room?
That was an interesting one because, if we talk about the different modes, if we look at facilitation, as you quite rightly know, one of the key things and attributes of a facilitator is neutrality. So, of course, if my authentic self, as you know, is to be quite wired and energized, or if I was maybe too vocal, or whatever, or too leading, in some respects, that neutrality would be kind of diminished. So you have to be very careful about the key to neutrality when it comes to facilitation. But what you can do, I think, in that sort of facilitative space where we're going from a space where we kind of get everyone on the same place with that kind of level of clarity before we diverge. We create, as Dave Gray would say, that gamification space, that fuzzy space where true authenticity is key before we converge. What you can do is create a place of safety. I not that everyone needs to do this. This is just my thing, but I'm full of self-deprecated humor. It's just what I do, and I'm happy to be that person. My kids often say, "Why are we that person?" I said, "It's just who you are." But sometimes it's okay to be, in create whatever you do, however you do it, creating a space for psychological safety. I think humor brings people closer. You've got to know your audience. Okay. You might be working with a very sensitive situation when you're facilitating, but warmth and humor and all those things enables people to feel safe, and then safety enables authenticity and everybody to be their true self.
And do you remember, as you've been on this journey, any moments of magic? So when you've facilitated sessions with groups of people, like, have there been any real standout moments for you as a facilitator where you've actually helped somebody either be their true authentic self, or you've just seen a transformation in somebody in that room as you've created that psychological safety? I don't know, it could be somebody who's very quiet initially, and then all of a sudden they felt so comfortable that they just become this other person.
Absolutely. Is it the latter that you just said around the sort of more silent people? I think that there are different ways in which we collaborate. With my background before I came more into sort of corporate and the business world was working in social care, working with adults with learning disabilities. And the key thing around facilitation was around inclusivity, accessibility, and total communication. So that's something that I'm very sort of passionate about, and encouraging and enabling people to communicate, be authentic, and feel safe to do so requires different forms of communication. So I really enjoy it when you kind of arrive into what feels quite a stuffy environment. It might feel slightly corporate. It might feel quite formal. There might be some invisible conflicts that you're having to deal with, that maybe you as a facilitator that you weren't aware of first. And then when you're in there, you can see there's maybe some levels of hierarchy. When people suddenly start feeling safe and you can see that there's more of a holacracy, there's more warmth, there's more energy and ability for everybody to interact. And the moment that you actually, Paddy, feel like a fly on the wall, you're not necessarily in the circle, but on the outside, and you can see the magic happening from very much like the training from the back of the room approach, and getting the people in the corners to talk, and getting that sort of neutrality across that group is wonderful.
And I want to explore your journey into visual thinking a little bit, because that's what I think I know you for predominantly. And then, you've then grown all these other tentacles in terms of your skill set,
That's
which
right.
is around that kind of product space. But, well, first of all, for anyone that hasn't heard of visual thinking, what is it? And how did you get into it? And how has it helped you in the work that you do? Because one of the things I know you and I are both really passionate about is future proofing
Yeah.
ourselves against AI and all of this good stuff. So, is visual thinking one of those levers that if we master it, it can really help us future proof ourselves?
It's really interesting you say that. a lot of people say, why don't you go on to sort of AI and chat? Why couldn't a robot create the same output? And that's the problem. There's the mistake there is the focus on output rather than process. So that's sort of, I've kind of come to the finale before I kind of explain the journey. So for me, I'm an illustration graduate, and then I worked for 10 years with adults with disabilities. The degree bit is obsolete. It means nothing as far as visual thinking comes in. If anything, it makes you a little bit too prescriptive and a little tight. For me, the focus of visual thinking and visual storytelling and graphic recording and all the other wonderful words that people may use, it's all about visual literacy. I know I remember mentioning this before at the Visual Jam, in that this high idea of visual literacy. And I came across a really interesting academic study by Annalise Tillman, What We See and Why It Matters. And she says that you navigate a children's book using your visual literacy before you learn to read and write. And I think that really resonated with me because it's so true. Everybody experiences visual information from a young age, and you learn to use it where you're navigating a map, children's book, a framework, a model. It's telling a story. So for me, whether I'm working in social care or in business, the visuals very much align to what we were just saying about authenticity. The visuals are helping with the process. They're helping to create human connections. And that's what it's about. The picture behind me, somebody might say, that looks pretty, or it's nice, but it doesn't really mean anything impactfully as it would the people in the room at that moment when you're drawing. So again, it comes back to the human. And as far as future-proofing yourself, the problem is, and this goes back to something you and me are very passionate about with Sir Ken Robinson, about the impacts education have on creativity. Visual thinking is not about drawing pretty pictures. Visual thinking isn't about, it can be, of course it can be, but it's about the stuff that matters in product and in business, which is generating ideas, solving problems, and finding alignment and building on those human connections. So, that's what it's about. And so it's very much aligned. So going back to future-proofing, it future-proofs you because robots don't think the way that humans do. We're conceptual thinkers, and we use those visuals to join the dots.
Oh, amazing. And yeah, I totally agree with everything you've just said there. I think one of the big barriers for people when visual thinking is the drawing aspect, and people often will play down their confidence. And I think that's such a shame, isn't it? When we are children, we love to draw, we love to create. And then as we grow up, we're kind of kicked out of us a little bit, and we start to get embarrassed when we're drawing doodles and things like that. And I think that's such a shame, because an incomplete picture is actually a really powerful picture, isn't it? Because others can then build upon that picture, and then we can start to collaborate and build ideas together, rather than if I stood up there and started drawing, I don't know, painting the Mona Lisa. That would actually hinder collaboration, I guess, right?
Exactly. When I went to Dundee, Duncan of Jordanstone, I'll never forget meeting, and he is the most amazing artist and unbelievable paintings, most beautiful paintings. But when we were doing the illustration course, he was always sort of graded badly because he was a perfectionist from the beginning, but we were graded, or we were sort of trying to be focusing on that process, the iteration. You can see how visualization and drawing is very close to the communities we are in Agile, because it's all around iteration. It's all around learning and that design process. And going back to what you said, if one person can take one thing away from this podcast and this discussion, it would be to kind of remove those inhibitions. My daughter has just gone to university in Birmingham, so very close to both of us. There we go. And and she's doing a creative degree. She's doing English and she's doing theatre. But from a young age, she always had a crayon in her hand. When she was in a pram, she had a crayon and some paper. You couldn't you couldn't remove, and she was remove the pen or the crayon. She always drew. And a few years ago, she decided to do art as a GCSE, and she was graded a different way to the way that she drew, and it really threw her confidence. So I almost, this sounds terrible, but I almost encourage people not to do a GCSE in art. I think that it can inhibit you from realizing the amount of creativity you can take to the next level throughout your walking life. And if you do do art at GCSE, great, but just remember that it's not just about a specific one-dimensional approach to drawing. It can be used for so many more things.
Do you know, first of all, congratulations to your daughter. That's amazing. And I'm glad she's following through with her passions. And one of the reasons I started this podcast actually was because of my daughter as well, which was really ironic. She was, well, she still is a huge creative. She's 15 now. And I used to always be banging on about tech, and how she should think about tech. And she's like, Dad, I'm a creative. Just let me be. I don't want to go into tech. And let's see where she ends up. But that really got me thinking about this aspect of kind of human skills and the creativity side of things. And actually, it's super important. And often we don't give it enough airspace. And really, that's been my motivating factor for the podcast. And then ChatGPT came along and the world changed completely. And I was like, well, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe this human stuff is actually going to be cool one day, because people are going to want to build those skills and not forget them. But yeah,
100%. EQ over AI all the way, and underneath emotional intelligence of that self-awareness and that self-regulation and relationship management and that social awareness, all the things that we started this podcast talking about regarding sort of facilitation and human skills. I sort of put visualization in that box. And those are the sorts of skills that people should be investing in to future-proof themselves. So you're 100% onto something.
Well, hey, I'll even ask ChatGPT at the end of this. We'll do a summary and say, ChatGPT, is this the right thing to do? And we'll see what it says. So you are a master facilitator. You do so much in that space, training courses, you do coaching, you do day-to-day facilitation. Could you share some of your favorite techniques, icebreakers, energizers, whatever that might be for you? What are some of your go-to tools and techniques that you have in your toolkit?
Oh, I think that we've sort of moved to very much this hybrid way of working at. And so although I still deliver a lot of training face-to-face, majority of it, I would say, is virtual. So I guess I maybe give people some guidance or give some sort of ahas, which you may or may not be using already in that virtual setting. I think it's probably stuff that people are already doing naturally. But the first thing, with icebreakers, I always think that when we talk about connecting with people don't like to be put on the spot. Sometimes it's quite, unsettling. So I always think that you've got to create that journey before it happens. When you think of any effective facilitated session, you always need to start the narrative before and continue it till after. So as far as bringing in that narrative and creating connections, I always like to share a mural or Miro or Lucid, whatever collaborative tool that you wish to use, and get people to introduce themselves or an object best describes them or something. But to do that before, and that nice little icebreaker gives people the opportunity to make connections. I absolutely love the low-tech social network as well. Works a little better when it's face-to-face, but in the game storming book, but actually joining the dots, I think it's a wonderful thing to do in a larger group, in a conference. And as far
could you explain that one a bit more, just in case someone hasn't come across it?
It's so cool. And again, it's almost like we're kind of us against robots when we say low tech. But it's basically a glorified mind map, or it's very much like a systemic approach to kind of connecting people. So when you join a room, a facilitated session or an event, you can grab an index card, you write your name, and you might write something that you want to take away from this gathering, conference, session, meeting, and you stick that on the wall, and then other people write their name and something they want, and then you can either draw leave it on paper and then just grab a pen and draw a line of a connection, or you can use string, and it becomes a mass of connections over things people want to kind of connect with, whether it be geographic, whether it's things of interest. But it's wonderful to sort of see this sort of web of connections that are created. It's low tech because you're just uploading an index card, but it's super powerful and great fun. And the other final thing is something we all use, which again is those collaborative tools. I always worried. I don't know about how you felt, and I know you and Grant had a debate, a good talk about this, about virtual versus face to face. I was quite nervous and apprehensive of the level of collaboration you'd get when facilitating sessions virtually and online. But I actually find that there's more holacracy and less sort of hierarchy, and everybody is sort of facing the same space and everybody's navigating that. Usually is an animal or crustacean or something, and that humor kind of brings a level of connect, and actually think that really works well as well.
Yeah, it was really interesting because Grant and I did that talk called Collaboration Mania at a recent business analysis conference, and I was championing kind of face-to-face and in-person facilitation or problem solving, and we came across lots of really interesting research as we were going through that. And one of the piece of research that was particularly telling was, I think it might have even been Miro or one of these tools. They'd created this insights report. I have to double check exactly which report it was, but they looked at how do the different generations see themselves. Are they feeling like they're more introverts, extroverts, etc.? And when you start to look at kind of this next generation, the majority of them were classifying themselves as introverts. And actually, they much prefer the virtual experience because it means you're not in the spotlight as much. So that if you're asked to do a poll or some form of very quick survey, it means you can actually just do that in the background without really being in the limelight. And the virtual setup really enables you to do a lot of that type of activity. And so, with myself, I'm quite traditional. I'm like, oh, well, I want to see people's faces. I want to be able to engage with them as they're giving me their opinions, when actually many people don't. For many people, like you say, they don't want to be in the spotlight and they don't want to be under that pressure. And these virtual tools and experiences can really help with that. So
yeah,
it's a really difficult one to say, well, which is better, because there are just so many variables.
And I think it's an interesting point you make there as well. One thing I learned from an early stage as a trainer was that if you can try to connect with that one person out of 30 that you don't feel you connected with, you can lose 29. So it goes back to that authenticity. But there's always maybe one person that may say, Stuart never came into the breakouts. It would have been good to have the instructor in the breakout rooms more. And I make that a clear disclaimer at the beginning of my training, is that I will not go in the breakout rooms because that is a safe space for you. And when someone calls on me, I notice that there's much more talking going on. And that's so completely to answer your question. Often people, going, to what you've just said, a lot of people in a wider group won't necessarily talk, but in the smaller breakouts will. So it's creating those environments of safety. And I think you're right. Virtual working does that.
And I want to briefly touch upon product, because you have been in that space of Agile and product management, I guess, for a while. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in that space? And are these skills that product people should be thinking about as well?
You and me have many conversations, whether it be on this or offline. And my journey into product wasn't the conventional route. I'm not a software developer. I did come from, after working in social care, I did go into a space of working within traditional project management, became a Prince 2 practitioner, and all the other things that creatives sort of like kryptonite to a creative, but nonetheless, lots of learning. But I came from a space where I was working in service design and working in social care, but working within service centers. more on service versus product. But of course, as the Scrum Guide says, a product is simply a vehicle to deliver value. So for me, going back to authenticity, the connection I have with product is telling a story. And again, it joins the dots with visuals. It joins the dots with being human, the authentic bit that we've talked about. The bit that I'm very passionate about, which I think isn't necessarily a new trend, but it's specifically an area that people should really be focusing on. And it's something you're very passionate about and are very good at, in that storytelling. So whether you are waking people up out of their complacency or you're considering the art of possible, that's what a true product person, owner, whatever you want to be, needs to be focusing on. And I think that with all of the advancements of technology, the other thing that I think is really important is the power of not knowing leading to success. Because in this world, if we created the Venn diagram of viability, feasibility, and desirability, and of course, sustainability, you can't know everything. So I think that the things, not necessarily trends, but the qualities that you can never, ever let go of is diversity of thought, true collaboration, and storytelling and curiosity. So, again, I don't think they're necessarily trends because they're things that I think have always been pertinent, but I think they're even more pertinent now than they've ever been before.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Stuart. And as we approach the end of this particular episode, I'm going to give you a question that I tend to ask towards the end now. One of my favorite questions. I gave you no forewarning on this, so I'm going to hit you with this one. So if you had any superpower to abolish something in the world of work, so that's to remove something in the world of work, and we're only going to do it for 24 hours because we're product people and we like to test and experiment, what would that thing be? And it could be absolutely anything you want.
Anything that we could abolish. Oh my word. What could you abolish that was, I would say, that's such a difficult one. I would say the main thing that is any bureaucracy, anything that sort of, that we've talked about the benefits of virtual working, but there's something quite formal about scheduling a call. So if there was a way that you could just virtually talk to people without making it feel too prescriptive, and to make it, if you could create a world where even virtually you could feel like you've got a sense, the water cooler conversation or the corridor conversation, that will be wonderful. Don't know how you do it, but I would love not to actually go, Paddy, I'm going to schedule a call to talk to you, because already there's that level of formality which ruins creativity. So yeah, to create a water cooler environment virtually.
Love that. We should maybe create a website called tapontheshoulder.com or something. And then if you want to tap someone on the shoulder, you could do it. And
Not scare people. Might be a bit.
Oh, brilliant. And Stuart, how can people get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation? Are there any exciting things you want to share with the audience about what you're working on?
I think it couldn't be any more exciting. As I'm right now today, I actually I've after 9 exciting years working within a corporate organisation, I'm now working independently. So you can find me at stuartyoung.uk. It's my new website. I'm quite noisy on LinkedIn, and I'm going to be doing some work and sharing some videos via the Agile network as well. So you can find me and other things in there as well.
Amazing. I was just Googling your website just now and loving the logo. Yeah, it looks super cool.
The classes are there. Albert,
that
could be you. It could be your website.
Well, it looks great because it's got that kind of visual, kind of hint of visualness to it, which is great. And I love your little tagline: connect, communicate, and collaborate, which is everything we've just talked about. So fantastic. Well, that's absolutely amazing news, Stuart. And as we were kicking off this episode, I was like, I'm surprised you haven't done this sooner, but we're all on a journey. So I'm super excited for what lays ahead in terms of your adventures. And I'd love to see, how you get on. And I'm sure it's going to be absolutely amazing. And maybe at the end of the year, we should have a connection call just to see how it's all gone and some of your lessons learned as well.
Maybe and the grey hairs. Let's see how many greys I've got by the end of the year.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, Stuart, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, as always, to spend some time with you.
Likewise, thank you so much.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.